When you finally walk away from an avoidant partner, something strange and deeply disorienting often happens. The very person who seemed emotionally unavailable, who gave you scraps of attention and always held you at arm's length, suddenly begins to flood you with it. It can feel like a switch has been flipped. Texts arrive out of nowhere. Calls at midnight, long emotional confessions, even talk of a future together. And in those moments, it's incredibly tempting to believe you were wrong about them, that maybe this is the breakthrough you've been waiting for. But what's really happening underneath is not love awakening. It's fear of losing control. Avoidants are often driven by an unconscious need to regulate their emotions by controlling closeness and distance. When you were available, they kept you at a distance to maintain emotional safety. But when you leave, the balance shatters. Suddenly, they're not the one controlling proximity, you are. And that flips their internal system into panic. It's not that they've suddenly become more capable of intimacy, it's that they're trying to stop the bleeding. This is the cruel trick. The surge of attention isn't born from growth, it's born from fear. Now, the dangerous part is how convincing it looks, because this reaction mimics real change. You hear things you've been longing to hear. I miss you. I realize what I lost. I'll do anything to make it work. And because your heart is wired for connection, it responds to hope. Hope is powerful. But this is not hope, it's bait. It's the nervous system's way of pulling back what feels like a lost source of emotional stability. And once they feel you're close again, that same old pattern begins to quietly reset itself. The warmth fades, the walls rise, and you're left wondering if you imagined that brief glimpse of love. Here's what's crucial to understand: people don't transform their attachment patterns overnight. Real change takes time, consistency, self-awareness, and often deep emotional work. A sudden flood of attention after months or years of emotional starvation isn't transformation. It's emotional shock. If you mistake this temporary panic response for permanent growth, you walk back into the very cycle you just broke free from. And the longer you stay caught in that loop, the more it erodes your self-trust. There's also a psychological paradox here. When an avoidant senses that your love is no longer guaranteed, they idealize you. They chase what they can't have, not because they've discovered your worth now, but because scarcity sharpens desire. It's not about you. It's about their fear of losing their emotional anchor. And once they feel they have that anchor again, the urgency disappears and their distancing behaviors return. That's why this sudden surge feels intoxicating at first, but hollow in hindsight. It was never about love, it was about control. And if you've been on the receiving end of this, you know how destabilizing it is. Because you see flashes of the person you always hoped they could be, and it pulls at something primal inside you. But this is where your power lies, in refusing to confuse a reaction with a revelation. You are not walking away from someone who has finally awakened. You are walking away from a pattern that's desperately trying to reassert itself. After that initial surge of attention fades, or sometimes even while it's still unfolding, another subtle shift begins to happen. The avoidance starts weaving a different narrative, one where your decision to walk away becomes the problem, not their inability to meet you emotionally. It's quiet, almost invisible at first. A comment here, a sigh there. They'll say things like, "I just needed more time, but you gave up on me," or "I guess commitment was never enough for you." And in that moment, something inside you flinches. Because now, instead of standing firm in your decision, you start second-guessing yourself. That is the next trick, the guilt anchor. Avoidants are deeply uncomfortable with shame. To look directly at their own emotional avoidance would require confronting a well of buried fear, grief, and unmet needs that they've spent a lifetime keeping sealed. So when you leave, rather than sit in that shame, they instinctively push it outward. They reframe your boundary as abandonment, your exhaustion as impatience, your self-respect as betrayal. It's not a conscious act of malice, it's a defense mechanism. But that doesn't make it any less manipulative. Because what it does is shift the emotional burden back onto you. Suddenly, you're carrying not just your pain, but theirs, and you begin to feel responsible for healing it. This is how the guilt anchor works. It hooks into your empathy. It makes you forget the months or years you spent trying to bridge the gap, and instead convinces you that leaving was a moral failure. It exploits the part of you that values loyalty, that wants to be the person who doesn't give up. And if you're someone who naturally leans toward anxious attachment, this tactic hits especially hard, because it speaks directly to the one that says love must be earned through endurance. So you begin to rewrite the story in your own mind. Maybe you were too demanding. Maybe your needs were too big. Maybe if you had just been more patient, they would have come around. But here's the hard truth: needing emotional connection is not a flaw. Expecting reciprocity is not selfish. Wanting consistency is not too much. These are the foundations of healthy love. And if someone tries to make you feel guilty for needing them, that's not love. That's emotional deflection. What you're seeing is not accountability, it's inversion. They can't carry the weight of their own avoidance, so they place it on your back instead. And the moment you agree to carry it, you've stepped right back into the dynamic you fought to escape. The deeper danger is that this guilt doesn't just make you question a relationship, it makes you question your own perception. It erodes your trust in your reality. That's how people get stuck for years, circling the same emotional terrain, waiting for someone to become who they only pretend to be when they feel you slipping away. You start thinking the breakup itself was the harm when in reality, it was the most courageous boundary you've ever set. And that's what you have to remember when that guilt creeps in late at night and whispers that you abandoned them. You didn't abandon anyone. You stopped abandoning yourself. And no one should ever make you feel guilty for saving your own soul. After the guilt has started to settle in, after they planted enough doubt in your mind to make you question your decision, another layer of the pattern emerges, and this one is even more disorienting. The avoidant begins to show you fragments of vulnerability. They speak in hushed tones about their childhood, about how no one ever really understood them, about the fears that keep them up at night. They confess things they never told you before. It feels like a crack in the armor, like you're finally seeing the tender core they've hidden all along. And for a moment, it's breathtaking, because this is what you've been yearning for. Not grand gestures, not perfection, just emotional honesty. But here's the paradox: this sudden openness is rarely the beginning of transformation. More often, it's a carefully measured release designed to disarm you. Avoidants are not incapable of vulnerability, they are selective with it. They will offer just enough of their inner world to reignite your empathy without ever truly letting you in. It's not an invitation to connection, it's a performance of it. And that distinction is everything. When someone truly opens up, they risk something. They stay present when it's uncomfortable. They follow vulnerability with action, with consistency, accountability, and emotional follow-through. But when an avoidant is playing this card, the vulnerability is isolated. It's not part of a pattern of growth. It's a moment designed to suspend your exit. They want to interrupt your momentum. They want to soften your boundary, to make you hesitate, to make you think, if I walk away now, I'm abandoning someone who's finally trusting me. And that thought is powerful, because most people who love deeply have a natural instinct to protect, to nurture. You don't want to be the person who gives up just as someone begins to heal. They're counting on that instinct. They know that if they can stir your compassion, they can delay your departure. And if they can delay it, they can reset the cycle. That's the emotional mirage, a brief oasis of intimacy that vanishes the moment you try to draw water from it. If you stay and try to build on that moment, you quickly notice something unsettling. Nothing actually changes. The walls come back. The openness closes. The raw truth you saw is replaced by distance and silence again, as if it never happened. And you're left questioning whether you imagined it. That's part of the trick. It makes you doubt your memory, your judgment, even your emotional intelligence. It makes you wonder if you're too impatient or too cold to stay for the long haul, when the truth is you were just shown a false start. The real danger of this pattern is that it confuses your nervous system. It pairs pain with hope, withdrawal with reward, distance with sudden closeness. Over time, this intermittent reinforcement creates a psychological bond stronger than even genuine intimacy, because it keeps you chasing the version of them who only appears when you're on your way out the door. That version isn't real. It's a mask designed to keep you circling their orbit, never landing, never leaving, always almost. And the only way to break free is to stop treating glimpses as promises. Vulnerability without commitment is just emotional theater. Don't mistake it for love. If they can show their soul only when they're about to lose you, it's not because they've changed, it's because they haven't. And the most loving thing you can do, for them and for yourself, is to stop confusing their performance of connection with the real thing and walk away before the curtain falls again. And then comes the last twist, the part that leaves people questioning everything they thought they knew. After the chase, after the guilt, after the flashes of vulnerability, the avoidant often does something that feels like emotional whiplash. They go cold. They disappear. No explanation, no closure, just silence where there was once intensity. It's as if the person who was pleading for another chance a week ago has suddenly forgotten you exist. And it hurts, not just because they're gone, but because the absence feels like proof that maybe none of it was ever real. That's the final cruel trick, the vanishing act that rewrites the story to make you doubt your own worth. What makes this so powerful is its timing. They wait until you've softened, until the emotional defenses you built while walking away have lowered, until you've started to consider the possibility of giving them another chance. That's when they pull the plug. This is not accidental. It's the subconscious strategy of someone whose nervous system has been wired to equate closeness with danger. The moment they feel you leaning back in, their fear of engulfment kicks in, and they retreat to regain control. But here's the paradox. It's not just retreat. They make it look like rejection. It's not, I'm scared. It's, you weren't worth it. And that's what leaves such a deep wound, because humans are meaning-making creatures. When someone exits suddenly, our minds scramble to explain it. We replay every word, every text, every glance, trying to locate the moment where it all shifted. We assume it must be about us, that if they left, we must have failed. But this reaction says far more about their internal system than about your value. They are not leaving because you were unworthy of love. They are leaving because love terrifies them when it stops being distant and starts being real. When closeness is abstract, they can fantasize about it. When it becomes concrete, they run. The danger is that this kind of abrupt disappearance doesn't just hurt, it rewires your self-concept. It leaves a psychic scar that whispers, you weren't enough. And if you don't name what actually happened, that whisper becomes a belief. It becomes the lens you see future love through. That's how people end up shrinking themselves in new relationships, showing less of their heart, offering less of their truth. Because on some level, they're still trying to avoid being abandoned again. And that's exactly why this last trick is so cruel. It doesn't just end the relationship. It makes you question your ability to be loved at all. But here's what you have to anchor yourself to: their silence is not evidence of your inadequacy. It's evidence of their fear. People who are secure in themselves don't vanish to prove a point. They don't weaponize absence. They can say, "This isn't working," without needing to make you feel disposable. The avoidant can't do that, because to do would require owning their fear. And that's the one thing they're still running from. And this is where your power returns. You stop chasing explanations from someone who can't even be honest with themselves. You stop letting their withdrawal define your worth. You let their silence be their legacy, not your identity. Because the truth is, you didn't lose them, you released them. And what you released was never love, it was a cycle. Walk away knowing this: their disappearance isn't proof that you weren't enough. It's proof that you were finally too real to play with.
3、2、1，走！